So tonight we've got presentation number one, and today is kind of a theme night where Nerd Night doesn't typically have themes, but today's theme is space, because yesterday was Space Exploration Day, yes? And we're trying to connect that with today's Nerd Night. So our first presenter will be Laski, and her presentation is Give Me Space. So let's do it. Should I announce all of them? Yes, I'm going to do that then. I'm going to do what this woman tells me to do. So our second presenter is Physics, the Debunking of the Millennium Falcon by Anna Sweet. And presentation number 3 is Space Bioastronautics, How Do You Poop in Space, with Dr. Lynanne George. So those are our presenters for tonight. And with that, let's call up Laski to the stage. Let's give her a hand, everybody.
It won't stick to my ears. Okie dokie. Can you all hear me? Yes. Better? Check? Okay. Sounds good? I'm like echoing here. All right. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Welcome, all my fellow nerds. How many of you like your personal space? Oh, I get it. Okay. I like to use my stage. You're confining me here. Okay. So my knowledge of outer space is pretty small, but I do love communication studies, and I love to talk about how we communicate with others. My favorite thing about it is, regardless who you are, what you do for a living, what your goals are in life, we can all benefit from having more effective communication skills. So we have all spent the last year kind of by ourselves. We're getting back out and integrating into society. I figured it's a good time to kind of look at and talk about personal space, nonverbal communication. So what I was going to do is get really close to somebody. Okay, so just curious, how does this make you feel? Uncomfortable? Really? How about you? Would you guys be able to pay attention to me if I stood here the whole time? Would any of you be able to pay attention to me if I stood right next to you for the duration of my speech? No, because you'd be saying, why are you here? Can you back up? Give me some room, right? So I won't be doing that. But as we get back out into the world, we have to remember some people are going to be like me who couldn't wait to run out and hug everybody and everything that I could. Some people loved their year off and they're just like, please give me more space. Both are good. The thing you want to know is how to recognize that in others and be respectful of their feelings and their boundaries. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is a little bit of nonverbal communication. I'm going to go over some nonverbal codes and talk a little bit about personal space and haptics and proxemics, some fun words you'll learn. Oh, you can't really see that too well. But so we call nonverbal communication the relationship language. One of the reasons we call it that is because the more you know somebody, the deeper relationship you have with them, the easier it is for you to decipher their nonverbal messages. Now, nonverbal communication is important. Most of the time when I teach or talk about communication, we're thinking about like talking to people. But really, 93% of the meaning that we take in communication comes from our nonverbal messages. So this is kind of the agreed upon numbers in the field of communication studies. I don't know where they got them through all their studies, but 55% of meaning that others are going to take from your communication are going to be through your body movements, your gestures, your facial expression, anything to do with your body. The 38% is like your tone of voice, how you say what you're going to say, how fast you talk, how slow you talk, everything to do with your voice. And only 7% is the actual words that you speak. So one thing I like to talk about in communication is, have you ever heard the saying, the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Well, in communication, the meaning, the interpretation is in the receiver, the person listening to that message. So today, for example, me standing up here, it is not my job to make sure that any of you learn something or pay attention. My job is to try to present information in as many channels as I can, to try to reach as many of you as I can, in hopes that you'll get my message and walk away with some knowledge. So one of my favorite sayings is, you cannot not communicate. Does anyone agree with this statement? Okay. So this is one of the axioms in communication, which I like to think of as kind of like a principle or a foundational belief. And there is no such thing as an anti-behavior, because it would be a behavior. So I used to think, even if you like kind of packed up all your stuff and you moved into the mountains and you became a recluse and you were around nobody, you're still communicating something. Because unless you were born and never had an interaction with another human being, somebody knows that you're missing. They know that you're gone. Somebody's wondering where you are. Or they know that you just don't want to be around people. So even if you were to disappear, you're still communicating something to somebody, right? And we just need to become more perceptive of those kinds of behaviors when we're out and about. If you see somebody sitting there with headphones and a book, they probably don't want you to come up and start talking to them and say, hey, how's your day been? I haven't seen you in a year, right? And you're sitting at the library or something. But people will do that. That individual is clearly saying, I don't want to be talked to right now. So there are 7 nonverbal codes that we talk about in communication studies. Kinesics, which is kind of your body movement, your personal appearance, everything from what you wear to the jewelry you wear, the smells you have on you, how you do your hair, all of those things. Proxemics, which is what we're going to spend some time on, that is how close you are to others. Haptics has to do with touch communication, and the vocalics is how you say what you say. And then the physical environment we'll talk a little bit about, and how you kind of set up your space and use your space, and where maybe you're having an event. And then chronemics has to do with time, and how we communicate through time or timeliness. So I'm only going to really cover the few, but I just wanted you to know that there's a whole field of study there. So the first thing we got to know is, what is the point of nonverbal communication? When you think of nonverbal communication, what do you think of? Body language, okay? Frowns, yes. That's a specific one. I like the specific. Facial expressions, exactly. So all these things that we do, they have a purpose behind them. So some of the functions are to repeat or complement the verbal message. So if I want you to understand that I'm tired, I might stretch my arms, I might yawn. Those nonverbal behaviors complement what I'm saying. So for example, like if I came home and you said, hey, how was your day? I'm like, I'm fine. Do you believe me? Even if you don't know me, am I fine? No, I'm not fine, because my arms are crossed, my tone of voice is down, I'm scrunching my face. All of those things don't complement the verbal message that I'm fine. So that either means you should leave me alone for a little bit, or, you know, would you like to talk this out and see what's going on? Another one is substituting. How many of you do this? If we're in a loud place and you want to try to talk to your friend who's on the other side of the room, you might say, call me later. Right? They can't hear you, but we know this means I'm going to call you later. But one thing that's important to remember with nonverbal communication is it is often unconscious. We maybe don't realize we're doing it. We're doing micro expressions. We're not really aware that we're doing them. They're also culturally significant. So different people, based on their beliefs, their experiences, how they view the world, they're going to interpret certain messages differently. And of course, the relationship of knowing the person, right? But we are more likely to believe the nonverbals regardless of how much we know a person. Then they can also be emblems. This is one of the favorite ones in my classes. So these are nonverbal gestures or movements that take the place of verbal language. So they have a meaning behind them. right? So I didn't want to put the picture up there, but can anyone tell me what this one's doing? Yeah, he's flipping a bird. So we all kind of know what that symbol means, and I think a lot of us have an idea of what the message is behind that image. Now I put the thumbs up here, because what does that mean to most of us? Okay, good job. In some cultures, this is actually more related to flipping the bird than, right? So I can't think of the culture off the top of my head, but there are other people in the world who see this as a negative gesture. It means something different. Or like the okay symbol. This used to mean okay. Now it means something different. Lots of people have changed that meaning. So you have to be careful with things like that. And you have to be careful because, again, the meaning is in the receiver. Even if you intend to say good job, if that person interprets your message as, you know, go away, they're going to, that's how they're going to act. They're going to treat you based on their perception of that message. We also have accenting and illustrating. So how many of you, you know, I caught a fish, it was this big, or, you know, I got a ball. So we kind of use our nonverbal gestures to accent or illustrate what we're talking about. And then regulating. These are behaviors that we don't really have a lot of control over. Like when you're tired, you yawn. If you're hurting, maybe you might move a little bit, or your wrist hurts, right? You might do some things. You're consciously doing them, but you're doing them because you hurt. Or like you break your ankle and you're kind of limping, right? These are regulating behaviors, kind of like how your heart regulates your blood, right? It's kind of the same concept there. So let's talk a little bit about space. Personal space. We have, it's the fancy word is proxemics, and we have these different zones. The intimate zone is usually reserved for those that we're closest to, right? So that's the 0 to 18 inches, about this far. When you're at work and with most of the members of your family, you're probably going to stay in this personal zone, right? And then social, 4 to 12 feet, that's kind of like the workplace. And then you have your public. So here we're public. I am kind of far away from all of you, but you guys are still social and personal. But I'm sure you've all met that person who you've talked to at work that gets really close to you. So you're sitting in your desk and they come right up to you. And you're like, can you back up? I can smell what you had for lunch. But sometimes we don't want to say that. So your job is to kind of put the right message out there and not do those kind of behaviors, unless it's someone you really know. I train in jiu-jitsu with Flip and Samantha, and the other day I saw Samantha and I ran up to her and I wanted to put her in like a chokehold, right? But I had to make sure first that it was her, because it probably wouldn't have gone over well if it was just someone with similar hair. So just to be, and I think one of the big ideas to take away from this is to be respectful of what the other person feels, right? So even if we feel a certain way, or we think they should think what we think, we have to realize that chances are they don't, and it's up to us to respect what their feelings are, what they believe about our messages. And I know you've all sent text messages where someone said, you know, they got mad at you, and you're like, I didn't mean it like that, and we get defensive. But really, I'm sorry that it was interpreted that way. That's not how I intended it. Let me try this again. Let me try to rephrase my message so that you can understand what it is I really meant. So in proxemics, or personal space, we talk about immediacy behaviors. Sorry. Does anybody know what immediacy means? Well, I guess there's a definition kind of right there. But these are behaviors that we do that create a psychological and a physical closeness to others. So how do we do that? Because if we are presenting or working with a client, or you're meeting new friends or something, our job, we want people to feel comfortable with us. And if they feel more comfortable with you, they're more likely to listen to what you have to say. They want to get engaged. They want to get to know you better, right? So even here, I'm trying to look at everybody. I want to scan the audience, give some eye contact. I'm not staring at the floor. I want you guys to feel comfortable and try to talk a little bit about myself so you will like me, I guess, right? And like what I have to say and pay attention. So I'm going to teach you just a few things that you can do to improve or think about when you're going out to get these immediacy behaviors. Again, be mindful of who you're talking to in all of these things. So a big one is smile, right? I know that sometimes it's cool to have like the stern face and be solid, but sometimes that's very cold and off-putting, right? So just a simple smile is more inviting. People want to come and meet you. They want to talk to you. They're a little more comfortable with what you're saying. If you can't read that, it says, I don't always use self-disclosure, but when I do, it's for the benefit of the client. And this doesn't mean you tell them like your life story, but share a little bit about yourself. When you disclose just a little bit, the other person is going to be more likely to reciprocate and share some about themselves. And you get to know each other and you establish that relationship. And we all know if you're in business or marketing or at work, at school, anything, it's about developing relationships. If you develop good relationships with the people, they're more likely to trust you. They want to come, you know, they want to buy you the things that you're selling. They want to work with you. This one's fun. Did you just say my name? Learn people's names and use them. If you're doing an interview, for example, that's like kind of one of the number one things. Learn the interviewer's name and call them by that name. People like to have their name used, and that's just something that makes them feel more comfortable. I don't know if you're like me, sometimes I have to meet someone 8 times before I have their name down. So now I've had to start doing different things. When I meet someone, if I shake their hand or the elbow bump now, whatever we do, I'll repeat their name. And if I didn't hear it clearly, I'll ask them to tell me. Because it's better to ask them in that moment when you first meet them to say their name right than it is like a week later you see them and you're like, hey, can you go introduce yourself so that I can remember their name? Because we've all done things like that. And this, again, makes some people feel more comfortable. Use we language. So I'm sure you've heard that, you know, talk about we, talk about us, kind of make it inclusive when you're talking to people. Direct eye contact. How many people does direct eye contact make kind of nervous? Anybody? You can look like right here at somebody and you're giving them direct eye contact, but they don't know that you're not like really looking in their eyes, because then you might get nervous. That happens. Now again, this is culturally specific, so there are a lot of cultures, specifically like Asian cultures, giving direct eye contact to someone elder than you is actually a sign of disrespect. So it's not something you really want to do. So some of this is cultural awareness. If you're ever going to travel the world, Google and look up some of their nonverbal behaviors that are important, just to have that basis, because you don't want to set a bad example because you offend somebody unknowingly because you didn't know, right, not to do the thing. And finally, you can give positive feedback. Does he look like he really understands what the person's saying? Well, yeah, I totally get what you're talking about here. Is it too loud? No? Oh. So, but giving positive feedback is things like nodding your head, looking at them, saying things like, uh-huh, yeah, and not like you do when you're on the phone and you're not listening to them, and you say, uh-huh, yeah, every couple minutes, and then you have no idea what your friend said to you. That tells somebody that you're engaged and you're actually listening to what they have to say. And the last one is try to sit closer to people. Right? If you're sitting and talking, scoot a little bit more. They actually have done a lot of studies, but like if a couple's on a date and a guy or girl turns their knees and they face you, that means they have a stronger liking to you. And sometimes, again, it's unconscious, but we're turning our body towards the person that we want to be talking to or we want to be close to. So those are kind of behaviors you can use. And just sit closer. And one thing, you can do this in interviews, it's kind of fun, but you ever heard of the floor is lava? Pretend like the back of the chair is lava. Because if it's hot, right, you're going to sit up straight, you'll lean forward because you don't want to lean back in it, and that'll kind of get you to seem more engaged if you just pretend like it's lava. Okay, so now we're going to move on to haptics. This is touch. How many of you play video games or computers and have heard this term in that realm, right? So it's kind of similar. It's just touch behavior. And the big thing I want you to take away here is just the strength, the placement, the duration of your touch can communicate anything from empathy to power and how we define a relationship. So this is, again, just important to understand what the other person feels like, because I know that I'm a touchy person. I want to touch people on their back and say good job. I want to hook arms. I want to hold hands with my kids. I want to do all of those behaviors, but a lot of people don't want to be touched, and especially now in like the post-COVID world, I think it's important, simple at first. Would you like to shake hands? Would you be comfortable if I gave you a hug? Right? Just ask them that question before you kind of jump in there. So this is just a fun piece of advice. If you've never heard this, we need 4 hugs a day simply for survival. We need 8 hugs for maintenance, right? And we need 12 hugs a day for growth. And in this study, they actually say these hugs should be about 10 seconds. So I'm pretty sure my kids were happy when COVID was over because they were my 12 plus hugs a day. I just was grabbing them and hugging them all the time. I think I still do that, but you know. That's how we get our energy. There's something positive when someone that you love or someone that cares about you genuinely, someone that you're friends with, gives you just a silent hug and you feel that connection. And I'm sure you all saw the memes and things going around about the importance of missing the hugs during COVID. So now that you're getting out there, go hug some people. But just, again, remember, ask first. Because some don't want hugs. How am I on time? Okay. The next one is kinesics, like I said. So this is all about your body language, everything to do with your body. So we have facial expressions. Have you ever heard of the universal emotions? Does anybody know why they're universal emotions? Because it doesn't matter what color your skin is, what your religion is, what part of the world you've grown up in. It doesn't matter any of those things. We all have expressions in our face and we can recognize them. So if you look at this face, how is she feeling? Angry. She's angry. She's got the wrinkle here, you know, when you're mad, you just kind of wrinkle everything up. It's kind of this is like one of the famous pictures from the original study, but if you look at anybody around the world, they're going to present anger in the same way, regardless of their facial features, again, or their skin color, or any of those things. How about this guy? Yeah, he looks like he's scared. He's having fear, surprise, actually. He's kind of like, you got me. How about this girl? Disgust. Yeah, she's like, ew. How about this one? I mixed these two up. This is the fear. He's scared. She's surprised. His eyes are a little more squinted. How about this guy? He's happy. And the last one, sad. So you all know how to recognize these emotions in people just naturally. And we have a thing called micro expressions. So they're little tiny expressions that we make, and often they're unconscious. We don't even know we're doing them. So have you ever got a present, like for Christmas or your birthday or something, and you open it up thinking it's going to be one thing and it's like a knitted sweater, right? And you can be really excited, but for a split second, your face is going to, what? And that micro expression, oftentimes we can't control that, so we're going to give that expression. Okay. We're going to move on to one more thing here, territoriality. I'm just about finished. We are territorial by nature. This is like a primal instinct. We want to stake our claim. We want to be perceived as the owners of our space. So we see this all over. So like our real ownership, our home. We decorate our home a certain ways. Some people have certain colors they like. When you walk in, you get a certain vibe for that person based on their house. But then some of our perceived ownerships would be like your office space at work. Or like this example here. How many of you have gone to a water park or Elitch's? You've gone to Elitch's, right? And at 10 a.m., there's nobody at the water park, but every single seat is taken. There is a blanket on every single chair because we're territorial. We get in there, we put our stuff down, we claim our space because we want that to be our space. We do that at school, anywhere. We want to get our seat. We want to be in the front row or the back row, whichever it works for us. So I challenge you, if you are someone that does that, try sitting in different places in your meeting room, like, or in your classroom or in places. Try sitting in a different place. And this is a fun study here, the car backing out. So they actually have done like multiple, I think it's like 200 studies. And they found in psychology that people take 7 to 9 seconds longer to back out of a parking space if they know someone else is waiting for that space. It's interesting. And they actually found that men will take even longer if the person does any rude behavior like honking or trying to hurry them up. They'll tend to take longer. So, and again, this is kind of general. It's probably not all men, but I think that's an interesting thing. So I think about that all the time. And when I'm in a parking spot, I'm like, I know I better get out of here pretty quick if someone's waiting, because I don't want to be that statistic. So, like I said kind of in the beginning, communication is my passion. I could talk about this subject for hours and hours and hours. I think I did decent honing it down to 15 minutes. But if you have any questions or you want to learn more, I encourage you. You can always learn more about communication. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I know that. Sorry. Can you say it again because I didn't hear you? Their pet's name? Why can you remember the pet name and not? Well, maybe because you make some kind of visualization, right? I know that's what I do, is I connect someone's name to either how they look or how I perceive them, or, you know, my friend's dad's brother's uncle has that same name, so I made that connection. And maybe you do really like animals. It might be that thing. So you connect their face to the dog's name. I don't know if that's even a scientific answer, but yes. Where do we what? Oh, so Flip is actually an instructor. He teaches jiu-jitsu from the Valente brothers that he trained with in Miami, so he's brought it to Colorado Springs here. And we meet multiple times a week. It's really fun, actually. Samantha and I sparred today for about an hour. It just makes you feel good. It gives you confidence. And it's some nonverbal, right? So if you want to try to attack me on the street, I don't even have to use words. Yeah. The like switch? If you feel good about yourself, other people will like you? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, when you make people feel more comforted and invited, then they're more willing to get to know you. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Okay, so you mentioned a book, but you basically said, how do you interact with? So if they're communicating differently than your expectations. Well, one thing you could do is ask them simply, and just state it, like, hey, I'm not really sure what you're trying to say here. Can you explain to me? And that's how we learn anything about anybody, right? It's communication. You sit down and you talk to somebody, and you get to know their story and who they are. And you can teach, you can help, but I think in general, we are a product of our experiences. So we're going to communicate based on, you know, what we've learned in our lives. So, okay. Did you? Okay, so I teach at UCCS in Pueblo Community College, so if you ever take the communication class, you can take one of mine. But I also have a consulting business, and my goal is to help teach people, organizations on an individual, group level, how to communicate with each other and others more effectively, because I think that's the greatest skill we can have in our world today. So here's kind of my stuff. This will take you to the website, and that's it. Okay.
Hello, hello. Nerd Night. All right, thank you so much, Coral. Everyone, big hand for Coral. Woo! All right, so now that means we have come to Nerd Night Trivia, and I have decided to make it about space because we are celebrating the National Space Exploration Day, which happened yesterday. So our first question is, NASA stands for, don't blurt it out, no one blurts it out, please. Raise your hand and I will call on you and you will win a prize. Over there. Yes. This gentleman gets a nerd rope. Thank you very much. National Aeronautics and Space Administration, sorry. Boop. I know, I can't read that far. I forgot my glasses. All right, so next question is, when was NASA founded? No. Mm-mm. No. No. Wait. No. Wait. Yes. 1958. Nerd rope for this young lady over here. And the last question. How many countries have sent representatives to the International Space Station since its inception? No. 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 Close, but no. All right. No one knew this one. 19 countries. 19 countries. So with that, I will leave you guys to please follow, like, review, share, Facebook, Nerd Night COS, Instagram, Nerd Night COS. Follow us, let's help grow this community, sorry. We will have a break, about 15-20 minutes. Everyone could get a drink, go get some food, order food, and come back here for our next presenter, Miss Anne Sweet, which she will be debunking some of your favorite movies. All right.
Awesome. I figured it out. Yes. Nerd life. So, we are back, and now I'm going to introduce our next speaker, which is Miss Anna Sweet. So, come on down.
All right. Oh, I feel so fancy. Okay. Awesome. All right, everybody, thank you for being here tonight. I wasn't expecting so many people, so if I faint or something, someone come save me or leave me there, that's fine. I really appreciate you guys being here. My name is Anna Sweet. About 3.5 years ago, I sold my soul to the military, so I'm formally known by my slave name, which is Specialist Sweet. Thank you. I served 3.5 years in the Air Force, doing some pretty cool stuff overseas, and now that I'm here in Colorado, I transferred to the Space Force, so now I'm doing a cool, yeah, I know, woo, yeah, oh, it's so great. Oh, I know, that's me, oh my God, yep. Absolutely love my job. I love being in the space realm, lots of new information, and then a lot of great opportunities like this, right? Before we get started, probably the most important thing I'll ask tonight, I'm going to take a poll, right? How many Star Wars fans do we have here? Raise your hand. All right, good number. How many Star Trek fans do we have here? Okay. How many of neither do we have here? All right, you are a red shirt. I'm sorry to inform. If you don't want to be a red shirt, you can always be Jar Jar Binks. Those are your options. Okay, it's much worse. All right, so today we're going to be debunking Star Wars. Specifically, we're going to be debunking the physics of the Millennium Falcon. Obviously, not all of the physics. We would be here probably for about 3 or 4 days just straight talking physics, and nobody wants to do that. So we're going to hit on a couple key points. First and foremost, maneuvers in space, right? Why can the Millennium Falcon, in theory, not actually perform the maneuvers, and why any sci-fi, right? You watch the Alien universe, you watch Star Trek universe, you watch the Star Wars universe, why that maneuverability is not actually possible. Then we're going to talk about atmosphere re-entry. This is pretty important. If you've watched the Star Wars or pretty much any sci-fi, you know that spaceships come down from space. They just kind of like ease into the atmosphere and they just land, right? They're all dainty about it. Yeah, that's not a thing. No, that's false. And then, of course, the super exciting thing is hyperdrive, right? For all my Star Trek fans in here, we are going to talk a little bit about warp drive as well and kind of compare those theories. All right, so if you wondered what the inside of the Millennium Falcon looks like, this is an absolutely awesome photo detailing all of the mechanics of the Millennium Falcon. If you're a true nerd and you really just wanted a big poster of it, it was created by Kemp Remillard. So you can find this picture and you can actually buy it. What we're really going to be focusing on here is specifically the engine and back when we start talking about maneuverability, right? So what does it take to maneuver a space vehicle? So maneuverability in space is something that we do now with satellites. It's something we do with the ISS. Obviously, we've sent people to the moon, and so it is possible. However, with the Millennium Falcon, what we're looking at is kind of the wrong ideas. So does anyone, or can anyone here tell me Newton's first law? Any volunteer? I'm going to give that to you. That's a law. That was a good guess. So Newton's first law is talking about inertia, right? An object in motion will always stay in motion unless it's acted upon by another force. So when we're talking about the Millennium Falcon, we're talking about its maneuverability and its speeding through space. Louder? Oh, thank you. Is that better? Okay, awesome. Sorry, my people in back. Right, so when we talk about spacecraft, especially in the Star Wars universe maneuvering in space, right, you see the X-Wings, you see the Millennium Falcon, you see them like zipping and zapping and doing some flips until usually they crash into each other and blow up. What we really need to focus on is inertia, right, in Newton's first law. If the Millennium Falcon actually existed, and we'll go back to the engines and back that we looked at here, these are sublight engines. The Millennium Falcon has 2 different kinds of sublight engine. It has one for power, and then it has one for actual turning direction in its maneuvers. In theory, the sublight engines are going to be powered by photons, which we'll get into in a second, because that's a real thing. Right, so if the Millennium Falcon existed and it only had that one thruster on back, what would happen is as soon as it takes off, it would continue taking off for the rest of its existence, and it would go off into space, and it would never do anything else until either something's planetary gravity pulls it into their atmosphere and it gets destroyed and blows up, or all the people on board eventually grow old and die because they've just been maneuvering in space for all of their lives, right? The second thing we have to talk about is Newton's second law. I'll give it one more go. Does anyone know Newton's second law? All right. Oh, yep. Every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. Oh, my bad. Third. I thought I did my research a little bit better. That's my fault. Right? So every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. So in order for the Millennium Falcon to go and the thrusters to work, they're causing a reaction that is pushing the ship forward. In order for the Millennium Falcon to be able to maneuver, it would have to have some kind of thrusters on essentially every side of the ship. If it wanted to turn, it would have to have thrusters on this side. If it wanted to turn this way, it'd have to have thrusters on this side. Again, in theory for the Star Wars universe, it's using something called sublight engines, right, for its maneuverability. That wouldn't work. However, the idea of sublight and the idea of using photons as power source can work, right? And it's something that is in development, something that's being tested. However, if we wanted to send an Earth vehicle up into space using photon energy, we'd most likely have to have a actual launch pad as big as a city for one singular space vehicle. So not very effective, right? The next thing you'll see, it says we're out of gas, we're out of oxygen, right? All of our space vehicles here on Earth use something called LOX, right? And that's a liquid oxygen. In a combustion for a space vehicle, LOX is either mixed with kerosene, or in some space vehicles, it's going to be mixed with liquid hydrogen. In this case, right, getting rid of the photon idea, because we've already debunked that, if we were using what we have here on Earth in order to power the Millennium Falcon, eventually it would run out of fuel, right, especially for the energy that it would need to continue to push the mass of the Millennium Falcon forward. So if they were out in space and they ran out of fuel, to give you an idea, our satellites that we actually have in orbit now use similar stuff for combustion. In order to move one of those satellites to another orbit and back, it would almost use all of the fuel the satellite has for its entire lifespan. And so now we're talking about sending the Millennium Falcon into deep space. And so it would very quickly run out of fuel, so now we know that that's debunked. So in theory, yes, it could be done. You'd either have to have thrusters on every single side, or you'd have to have photon energy big enough to push the mass of Millennium Falcon, which would have to be a lot of photon energy. That's definitely not coming from those sublight engines. Debunked. I feel like the Mythbusters. I feel so good right now. It's like my favorite show. Oh, thank you. All right, so re-entering the atmosphere. So this is the second thing we're going to talk about. I love any sci-fi. I love when the Millennium Falcon, you can see it come down from space, and it's like, it just kind of lands and it sits down. Oh, it's beautiful, but it's incredibly unrealistic. So for first and foremost, there's a lot of things that aeronautical engineers and astronautical engineers have to consider when they're talking about re-entry to the atmosphere. First and foremost, making sure the space vehicle actually arrives in one piece, and making sure that it's protected from the temperatures of re-entry. So first, let's say that, it was like 70 degrees Fahrenheit when it came into the atmosphere. It's a nice, perfect atmospheric day for space vehicle re-entry. Even if that was the case, the space vehicle would be traveling so fast that it would, even if it, like our space vehicles now land in the ocean, right? That's like their nice, soft, like cushiony, like landing zone. Even if it landed in the ocean, it would blow to bits, right? Especially from the altitude that it's coming in from. So the first thing we see here, it says, I think I have some kids in here still, so darn it, Chewie, release the chute, right? The Millennium Falcon would have to have some kind of parachute or some kind of device that would slow it down. So what we have in normal space vehicles now is those vehicles have to be slowed down before the parachute is released to subsonic speeds. So when they're coming in, they're going faster than subsonic speeds. As soon as they're able to hit subsonic speeds, they're able to employ the parachute and land safely. When we're talking about the temperatures of re-entry, a general rule of thumb is re-entry typically or can be heated up to as much as 3,092 degrees Fahrenheit. Right? So what astronautical and aeronautical engineers have developed is they've developed something called TPS, thermal protection systems that they are able to coat the spacecraft with in order to keep it from being affected by those temperatures. A cool, neato piece of information is with the Millennium Falcon, when we're talking about re-entry, we're talking about temperatures, we can also think back to its force field, right? Like it's obviously being shot at by these X-fighters and it always seems to make it out mostly okay. There is something in development or something that is theoretical that was being tested that is plasma coating that scientists have been looking at now. Plasma coating could be used theoretically, right, as a force field. It could also be used potentially to protect the outer layer of the Millennium Falcon. But as far as the actual Star Wars universe is concerned, every time that it lands, right, it landed on Tatooine, it landed on Jakka. I think there are some theories in some of the books that it even landed on, where's my Jar Jar Binks? It even landed on Naboo. That's your hometown, by the way. Yeah, that wouldn't have been possible, right? Every time that it landed, even if it had TSP, that would have to be continuously reapplied, right? So, sorry, my Star Wars fans, it has been debunked. All right, so this is a cool beans one, all right? Like everybody, I love hyperdrive, okay? And then, of course, my Star Trek fans will get into some stuff there as well. So what is hyperdrive? The idea of hyperdrive is sending a vehicle somewhere faster than the speed of light, right? That's essentially what the Millennium Falcon is doing. And every time he's just like, okay, he just buckles his seatbelt and he like throws it in gear and like goes off the hyperdrive, right? You would be flat as a pancake if it was even possible to that extent, okay? Specifically, what a couple things that we're going to be looking at or talking about is how long it would take a spaceship to actually reach something else in space with hyperdrive. So from Earth to its closest star, if we even had the Millennium Falcon, it would take close to like 100 years if we went twice the speed of light or at the speed of light to even reach our nearest star. And this dude is just like, you know, like putting it in second gear and he's at the Death Star, right? Like, not gonna happen. Secondarily, what we're looking at is we're going to be looking at a couple of theories. So there is a theory out there that is specifically applied to the ideas of hyperspace and the ideas of something going faster than the speed of light. For starters, regardless of what you believe, your religion, or your spirituality, there are people that believe in the Big Bang, right? And people believe that at the time of the Big Bang, the objects in space, when the Big Bang happened, were moving faster than the speed of light. And that's one of the examples a lot of people use, a lot of scientists use in order to explain that idea. The second one is, if you really want to get into it, it's Einstein's theory of special relativity. That also deals with the concepts of the speed of light. Right, so for this specifically, again, it wouldn't be possible to go that far. If it was possible, and another idea that was looked at for my Star Trek fans was the idea of warp drive, right? So hyperdrive, speed of light, going faster than that. Warp drive is the actual bending of the dimensions of space or adding in the dimension of time and using that to end up on a second part of space or a different area of space. This theory was developed by, I'm going to butcher it, Alcubierre. Right? He was a scientist or a theoretical physicist who actually looked into the idea of warp drive and the possibilities there. So, when we talk about hyperdrive and our poor Millennium Falcon, what we're also looking at is we're looking at how much energy it would take to move that amount of mass, right? If you look at Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, then we know that energy equals mass times the square of the speed of light, which means the energy that it would take to go the speed of light or faster than, it would take essentially infinite energy to move the Millennium Falcon with infinite speed of light. Whatever speed of light you're using, you'd have to have that much energy in order to move that mass forward. Which means it would pretty much, if you had infinite of either, it'd be stuck in the speed of light and pretty much everyone on board would be squished like a bug. Our aircraft nowadays, our actual fighter aircraft with the Air Force can pull approximately 8 Gs, right? That's the max a human can go. It's theorized that the Millennium Falcon, some like big brainiac did the math, not me, I'm just reiterating, that the Millennium Falcon in a normal maneuver or normal space flight is pulling 12 Gs. So everyone on board, as soon as they put it into gear, would be passed out if they weren't dead, right? So yeah, definitely not possible. Again, it's theorized. There are the mathematical equations saying that it's possible. We don't have anything here on Earth that can actually perform that yet. So it has been debunked. All right. Does anybody get this reference? No? All right, if you feel like wasting a good 30 minutes of your time, go onto YouTube and look up the Thumb Wars, and it's a 30-minute episode of Star Wars, but they're all thumbs, and it's great. It's not, it's horrible. Do I have any questions? Yes?
The first one is, have you seen The Expanse?
I've not seen The Expanse.
Because I think it handles a lot of the maneuverability issues, a lot of the G's, like they use like some thickening serum in the bloodstream to do like Jackson.
Yeah.
But they're
That's cool.
trying to sort of solve this, but they use things like turn and burn
Yep.
for losing speed when you're thinking about re-entry, thinking about being at the destination. They also use what they call heat metal,
Okay.
like steam and like steam jets in order to reposition and fly without using the main combustion. So it's a lot of real interesting concepts that are more grounded in reality than Star Wars and Star Trek that employ that show. It's a really good watch. I think you'd enjoy it just for the physics, like the
Physics
physicality
aspect.
of it. Right?
Okay. The Expanse?
The Expanse.
I got it. Cool. So the question was, so first and foremost, he went a little bit into some of the stuff that's been released by the Pentagon, right? And some of the videos that they do keep pretty, like, right there, the Pentagon, they keep their cards pretty close. There have been a couple videos out there of certain flying objects, right, that have been released to the public and have been acknowledged. And so if you want to check that out, that's a pretty good find. The question that followed was what I think about some of the capabilities that might come forward in the future, right, either in the near future or the far future, regarding anti-gravity shields. Yep, so something that is going to protect it from the forces we talked about that are going to be pancaking people and pancaking the platform, right? Like anything I feel about space, I think every technological advancement is going to be incredible, right? I definitely don't think that the exploration of space should be limited, regardless. I think if we find a way to do it, and if it comes out and it's available to Jeff Bezos and maybe the rest of the public, then absolutely that is something that should be acknowledged, and I think that's something that should be used, right? I know a lot of the advancements, a lot of the technology that's coming out right now has a pretty definite focus on Earth's environment and how like we're getting pollutants and how we're kind of destroying our own place. And as horrible as it sounds, I think that the energy, the resources, and the willpower of the people, us Earthlings, to fix those problems is not going to come around anytime soon, right? I absolutely think, has anyone here watched Avatar? And I don't mean the last Airbender, y'all. I mean like the blue monkey Avatar, right? Okay, do I think that we should be going to other people's planets if aliens do exist and we do find them and just like taking them out? No, of course not. That's horrible, right? But even as it stands right now, there are a couple moons, even here in our solar system from Jupiter, that have possibility of having life on them, right? And so if something that possible is so close, then any technological advancement that we get that would be able to send people out farther, I absolutely think should be addressed, and I think it should be utilized. I won't be alive for it. Okay, cool. Ooh. How many of my military folks do I have in here? Anyone affiliated with? All right. If you are not, or if you are, I am also the coordinator for the STEM program on the Peterson-Schriever Air Force Base. The unit, the garrison, excuse me, it's called a garrison now. Yeah, I don't know. I've never had anybody need to find me for something. That's kind of something that I find a little bit scary, right? If you need to find me, I do have a Facebook. On my Facebook, it is Elsie. You can reach out to me via Facebook. I have like randos reach out to me all the time. Just let me know you attended the Nerd Night first, okay? So that'd be great. So Elsie Sweet, ELSIE. So yeah, cool.
Hello, hello, Nerd Night. Can you hear me? All right. Where is my clicker? Pop. That. All right, clicker. So, we are going to take a break in a minute. So, right now, before our break, we are going to have another round of trivia, of space-themed trivia. So, here we go. Remember, please raise your hands. Whoever I see first, that's who gets to win the prize. So, how much do astronauts grow in space? This was pretty awesome when I found this out. So, I hope you guys can think of this. I'll take it. Oh, hold on. 1 to 2 inches. So because there's no gravity in space, and you don't have gravity compressing your spine, it's so cool that astronauts actually grow 1 to 2 inches when they come back. They're taller. I need to go to space. I need to be an astronaut. Okay, so next question is, what has a gravitational pull so strong that even light cannot escape it? Black hole it is, yes. That was an easy one. I gave that one to you. That was an easy one. All right, and the final trivia question for the night. What was the name of the Russian space dog that orbited the Earth in 1957? Yes! Laika! Awesome. Okay, so we are Gonna go on another 15-minute break. Go ahead, refill your drinks, grab a bite to eat. There is Mandy Pen Photography. She has a photo booth over in the corner there. Feel free to go take pictures. Have a good time. It's free. It's fun. Use some props. And then come back here and we will have our final presenter, Dr. George, talking to us about how we poop in space. All right.
Lynanne George, and I am a rocket scientist. So I hail from Newnan, Georgia, a small town in Georgia. You may have heard of it, but you may not have. And today I'm going to talk to you about bioastronautics. So how do humans live in space? But I'm going to talk to you about more of the practical aspects. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the subtitle of my talk is, how do you poop in space? So the short answer to that is very carefully, right? So a couple of reminders. First off, let's just get the stage started here. Don't tell me the sky's the limit when there's footprints on the moon. Up a little bit? All right. So don't tell me the sky's the limit when there's footprints on the moon. And where are we going to be soon? We're going to be at Mars, that's right. Or even beyond that, perhaps Ceres. Or Vesta. Who wants to go to Ceres? Yeah, right on. So just to put things in perspective, we have a lot to explore out there, scientists. I know you guys were wondering that. My mom's here tonight, so she wanted to know this. So those are my two older brothers. And one day I decided I wanted to be a rocket scientist. So this is me telling my dad I wanted to be a rocket scientist. Bell bottoms, right? So I said I wanted to be a rocket scientist. So he got me an easy bake oven. So me being the curious kid I was, I decided to take a balloon and fill it up with air. And then I got another balloon and filled it up with methane gas. You guys know where that comes from? I had a lot of that. We had a lot of beans at home, so I had a lot of that. So I filled up this balloon with methane gas and put it in my easy bake oven and decided to light it on fire. What do you think happened? Any guess? Huh? If you're not sure, ask SpaceX. Right? So, SpaceX, this is one of their Starship launches. They did 4 in a row, and they all blew up, right? And they were based on 3 Raptor engines. And those were actually methalox, methane and liquid oxygen. And the point I wanted to make here is that we had 4, Elon Musk, you guys know him? Yep. We had 4 failures in a row, but what did he go on to do? Launch another one, and he succeeded. So the bottom line is, if we're going to explore space, like Elon Musk says, I'd like to die on Mars, just not on impact. Right? So a little bit about myself. I spent 20 years, 1 month, and 1 day in the Air Force. Not that I was counting. But I got to do some cool stuff, like teach at the Air Force Academy, go to Afghanistan, see the lovely country there. And also I got to launch Titan IV rockets. And one of the missions that I launched was the Cassini mission. Anyone know where that was to? Yeah. Saturn, that's right. It was a mission to Saturn. But Saturn also has this fascinating moon called Titan. And Titan looks very barren. It's very kind of brown and mountainous regions and things like that. Kind of reminded me of Afghanistan, but it also reminded me of Greeley, Colorado. And it also has oceans and lakes, and it rains there, right? But it doesn't rain water, it rains methane and ethane. So if we're going to explore places like this, how are we going to go about doing that and taking care of our earthly human functions? So to tell you a little story about the Cassini program, we could not get to Saturn directly. We don't have nuclear thermal engine technology yet. We're going to get that very soon. We don't have it yet. So what we decided to do is take a little mini tour of the solar system. We flew by Venus, Venus again, Earth, and then Jupiter. VVEJ trajectory. And each planet we flew by, you got a little boost from it, right? Little gravitational boost. So here we are coming by the Earth, and we had sensors on it to develop, to determine if there was life on like moons like Titan. So we decided to turn our sensors towards the Earth as we were flying by. Now we weren't flying by very fast or very close. We were flying a little inside the moon's orbit, about 400,000 kilometers. And we turned our sensors towards the Earth. So what do you think, there's a lot of humans on the Earth, right? So were we able to identify life here on Earth? What do you think? This is open to the audience. What do you think? Yeah? What do you think was an identifying factor? Feature. Water is one. Kind of could be there without humans, right? Anything else? Atmosphere, what? Electro emissions, yeah. We actually had radio waves. We could identify radio waves. So that was the 90s. So, of course, 97, we had the Macarena, right? So we identified that. But there was one other key feature. It was a gas. Methane, that's right. So where does methane come from? Cows? Anywhere else? Yeah, really humans, right? So we clearly identified the presence of cows and Taco Bells. So with that being said, let's talk a little bit about the space environment. So where does the space environment, a lot of people say when you're in space, you're in zero gravity, right? Is that right? Are you actually in zero gravity? Depends on how fast you're going, but if you're around the Earth, are you in zero gravity? So think about this. So if I take a tennis ball and throw it as hard as I could, hopefully it won't hit the liquor bottles up there, it will eventually either hit something or fall to the Earth. But if you've ever seen a rocket launch, you see it takes straight up and it turns over and gets that horizontal velocity, right? So if I could take a tennis ball and throw it 5 miles, the Earth actually curves away about 18 feet over that 5 miles. So essentially, it's rotating around the Earth. Like so, right? So you're actually in a state of free fall, not zero gravity. So that's an important point here, is that if I jump up and down, when I'm up and down, right, I'm not in zero gravity. I'm still being pulled by the Earth. So the fact of the matter is, astronauts in space are still being pulled. So we're going to call that either microgravity or free fall. Okay? So with that, what are some of the effects on the human body? So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly, or at least the first two. First off, we're under a reduced load on weight-bearing tissues. We're here on the Earth, we're under 1G. So when we're in space, astronauts actually have to exercise 2 hours a day. So if you think you can't fit in that 30 minutes a day, think about astronauts. The other thing is we have altered vestibular functions. So what is that? That's a fancy name for a balance process, right? So it doesn't matter if you're upside down or right side up, you're going to get confused. And it creates a condition called space adaptation syndrome. And about 50% of astronauts get this. But it's an interesting fact, men are more susceptible to it than women. Believe it or not. So for whatever reason, women are less susceptible. So when you travel into space and you see puke flying around, it's probably a man's. But the one I wanted to talk about most is reduced hydrostatic gradient. So what does that mean? It means water floats, right? And it becomes very spherical, goes into a sphere shape, like is shown here, and it creates a fat face, chicken legs type of phenomena. The other thing it does is it helps us, or it doesn't help us, identify when astronauts need to go, right? So in other words, when we're here on Earth, we have gravity telling us when we have to go. So about 3/4 of the way, or some people can hold out a little longer, but a little after a little while, a few drinks, you're like, gotta go. Well, up in orbit, everything floats into a ball. So what do you think happens with the bladder? It gets filled completely up. So when you gotta go, you really gotta go. So if you've ever wondered, well, that's humans, a little bit about humans, this is actually how animals respond in space. It's kind of hard to see, but this is a flatworm with 2 heads. Yeah. And if you've ever wondered, what do mice do in space? They kind of do the same thing they do here on Earth. They run around, but then you have some floaters like that there that just kind of floats around too. So, sometimes humans like to do that sort of thing, just kind of float through life. Mice are a great example of that. So when it all got started was the first man in space. Who was that? Anyone know? Who was first American man in space, by the way? Anyone? Yeah. Alan something. Shepard. Yeah, she gets a prize. Does she get one of those nerd things? All right, cool. All right, I'll get those in a minute. So was Alan Shepard. So he was only going to go up for a 15-minute flight, right? Soviet Union had already beat us. They'd been up in space. Here's Alan Shepard. He's going to be our first U.S. astronaut. So he's going to fly for like 15 minutes, suborbital flight, 15 minutes. So he gets ready in the morning. He's ready to go. He eats eggs for breakfast. And then he drinks some coffee, has some orange juice, drinks some more coffee, has a little more orange juice, and figured, no big deal. I got a flight, 15 minutes. What they didn't count on was the 3 hours of flight delays. So what do you think happened to him? So here he is. They have to get into these little bitty capsules to go up back in those days. They strap him in really well. It takes like an hour to get into that. He waits 3 hours. And he's thinking, man, I shouldn't have drank so much coffee. So the next thing he does, flight control gets a message. Can I exit to pee? Of course, NASA, being them, they had to assemble a team and think about it and, stuff like that. they finally came back and said, do it in your suit. Do it in your suit. So a lot of people don't know this, but Alan Shepard, the first man in orbit, actually went to orbit with wet underwear. Didn't know that, right? So now they realized, oh, I better start addressing this issue. So here we are, there's Gus Grissom there, and they developed this one-size-fits-all urine collection device. So the point of this is a one-size-fits-all. So there's him going, you want me to do what? In this one-size-fits-all. So that didn't work well because it leaked or they didn't fit, you know what I mean? So they developed these 3 different sizes: small, medium, and large size. But the astronauts fondly called them, fondly, meaning lovingly, extra large, immense, and unbelievable. And guess what? Being astronauts like they were, they're very cocky, right? So no pun intended. They decided that they were all unbelievable size, right? So what do you think that led to? That led to a lot of leakages in orbit. So they had a lot of problems. In fact, there was a mission with Gordon Cooper, who actually had some leakage during his flight, and it burned out some electronics. So that was a real problem. So they decided, need to address that a little better. But I'll bet you're wondering when I'm going to get to my actual topic, which is how do you do number 2 in space? So this was the original concept. Diapers, pretty creative, not really. And well, it was usable. They used it on the way up and down, but the problem was it was a double layer of plastic. So it was very uncomfortable to use, right? So once they get into space, they would tear that thing off. They're done with that. And they would use this device. And I'll let you imagine the name for yourself, but that was a containment object. And what they would do is they would tape it to their behinds and do their business, and then they had to take it off and then massage it for like 20 minutes. So that is a pretty, I mean, they did that. It wasn't their favorite part of being in orbit, right? So a lot of times it leaks. So this is a true story. Apollo 10, who did a dry run for the lunar landing mission, right? They were up there, and NASA was monitoring, and this was going to be, the next mission was going to be they landed on the moon. So they're up there. They used this device. Someone used it. And there were 3 astronauts on board: John Young, Tom Stafford, and Eugene Cernan. And they're sitting around at dinner. And this is the actual transcript from that flight. Tom, the commander, said, "Who did it?" John said, "Who did what?" And Eugene said, "Where did that come from?" So that's the setting for this next true transcript, confidential, hopefully not confidential now, but I didn't do it, and it ain't one of mine. I don't think it's one of mine. So that is a true transcript. So they realized that we needed to take care of that situation and start developing some way to take care of bodily functions. So that brought up Skylab. So Skylab operated, it was our first space station in orbit, and they actually developed this waste management system right here, waste management system. Really, it was nothing more than a hole in the wall with suction. So that's why I said you had to be very careful, right? Suction, it had a fan that blew and helped make the things move out of the vicinity of, where they were doing their stuff. So that was the first one. It didn't work all that great. It worked okay, but Skylab was a pretty short-term mission. It lasted like 3 years. So the space shuttle era, they came up with this space shuttle toilet. And now we have, you can't see it up there, there's like a suction cup up there, and that's the toilet seat. The only problem is it was 4 inches wide. So most toilets are regular size, right? It was 4 inches wide. So they had to go through potty training on Earth before they went there. So you ever ask an astronaut, how is potty training? Ask an astronaut about who was on the space shuttle, right? 4 inches. They had a camera underneath to help train them, to help guide them, believe it or not. So now we get to the ISS days. And this is the waste management system. Fancy term, right? So basically, it had suction also, but it also had, and I had to have another picture with the suction funnel that went way up there. But the problem was it tended to leak. And it also, one thing I didn't talk about is with the reduced weight on load-bearing tissues, they also tend to put out a lot of calcium. So the toilet would often get clogged with calcium. And when you're up in space, that's not a good situation, right? You don't want, what? Call the plumber, that's right. They can just drive right up there, right? So hopefully you have a plumber on board. So they decided they needed some improvement. Here we go. This is now the new, as of last year, I think it was last October, they delivered this NASA's new space toilet. And this allows both suction, it's very, very high velocity fans that helps move things along. And it's also more accommodating to females. So we're starting to fly a lot more women up there. It's more accommodating to females, and it also recycles about 80 to 90% of what is put in there. So yeah, it's actually amazing. So as Jessica Meir said, today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee. So that's all I have for you tonight. It was a quick overview of space toiletry. Are there any questions? Yeah.
You know anything about the proprietary systems of Bezos and what's his name, Richard Branson? What they're going to do to help their people that think of the space go to the bathroom?
Are they using something like that, or they're using proprietary?
They can sell these NASCAR. Do you think that they're going to use their own proprietary engineered system?
I think personally they're going to use their own proprietary engineered system. I do, because there's a lot of things in civilian space, not DoD space, that are huge improvements. SpaceX is one of those examples, right? SpaceX is one of those examples. So a lot of things are going to be improved. By the way, I didn't tell you how much that space toilet cost. $23 million. And that's where the DoD gets their reputation of being, oh, the government spends $23 million on toilet seats, right? Well, these are not just regular toilet seats. These are specially designed to handle some of those unique environments. So I think civilians are going to come up with a lot more to offer. Yes? Why what? Oh, the question was, why did they have to massage the poop? Great question. So what they did is they put a chemical in there, and it helped break it down. So they had to massage it for like 20 minutes with that chemical in there, and then they would either dispose of it by sending it back down to the earth, or sometimes they would send it on a mission that would just burn up in the atmosphere. But they actually analyze their bodily functions, and that was part of it. Great question. Any others? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. George. That was fascinating AF. Yes. So that is Nerd Night for tonight. Let's see here. We have references from Dr. George if you want to take a picture of that or you want to know what's going on. And more references. And again, that's Nerd Night. We will be back next month. I don't know what day that is, whatever. Oh, see, that's why she's awesome. August 18th is the next Nerd Night, which is third Wednesday of next month. So we will see you then. And again, if you have any presenting ideas, reach out to us, nerdnightcos@gmail.com, and let's get you in the pipeline. Follow, like, review, share us. And I'd like to thank Mandy Penn Photography over there for doing the photo thing over there. It's not too late. You can go get that done. And for those of you that don't know, we also host another event, and that event will be coming this coming Monday, and that one is called Memoirs, True Stories Unfiltered. So, and we will have a special guest host, Patrick Murakami. So if you like stories, real stories of people, this is a very strong, emotional, powerful type of event, where this one is more fun, and yeah, that one is more, oh my gosh. But it's cool to listen to people's stories and just get a different perspective on things. So I think that is it, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you for coming, and we appreciate all of you.